Steve Hassan defines a political cult as this. In order for a political cult to be successful, they have to do two things. They have to control the media, and they have to stop gatherings of people. Do you remember what they did in the beginning of COVID? If they can't control them through the media and through isolation, they often will take a tactic from very successful religious cults. The political cult will engage all of their followers and require them to wear a specific article of clothing. Every time you do that, you further ingrain the belief of the narration coming from the cult leaders, which is Big Pharma.
Guys, I'm with Dr. Ardis, and he's just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to health, and you're just being used in so many ways to help so many people. But apart from all of that, you have a testimony, and I want to talk about it. So can you tell us about you used to be Mormon?
I did, actually. This is a topic that's only been hinted at a few times at different conferences where I've been speaking, and you go off the side to do different media interviews. And as I've been red pilling it, as they call it, a lot of things taught to us healthcare-wise that we believe are absolute facts or truths. They are not most of the time. What is being projected by the media and by the pharmaceutical industry. As I've been red pilling people on stuff about health, lots of people want to know, well, what else have you been red-pilled on in your life? Like, when were you ever awakened to something that maybe you accepted as truth before, realized it wasn't? But I come from a long line of Mormons, multi-generational Mormons, who actually helped settle some of the areas of Utah. So this is how far back
What?
my ancestry goes in the Mormon Church. So it's just generation after generation. All this started, I was actually raised in the Mormon Church. They have this terminology in the Mormon Church. You have Molly Mormons, or the girls that are perfect and follow all the rules. And then there's this term called Peter priesthoods.
I've actually heard that.
I would have been one of those Peter priesthoods, right? He did everything like he was supposed to. I did it all that I was told to do, following my dad's example, grandparents' example, all of it. And I have to say, I loved the community growing up in the Mormon Church. I grew up actually in multiple states. I did not just grow up in Utah. I was born in Utah. I was only there a few weeks. And then my family was living in New Orleans, Georgia, South Carolina, all over the country. So it's not just, Mormons are not just in Utah, they're everywhere. And I had a great collection of friends and families I adore, and created a great childhood and teenage life for me growing up.
Aww.
The whole Mormon culture was awesome. I loved them all. I have no regrets about being raised in that church, actually, in the community. And then something happened. I go off on my Mormon mission. I get married in the temple, actually here in Dallas, Texas, in 1999. So this was me. I was in bishoprics in the Mormon Church. It's just, my whole world was Mormonism. And I have nothing against anybody in the Mormon Church except some of the leaders, actually, at this point. And I'm talking at the very top. And that is only because they are withholding truths from the rest of the Mormon Church, from its history, that they don't want you to know. For me, everything changed, though, in 2008, when I actually went to a historical Mormon site that the church now owns right on the Mississippi River in Illinois. And the city's called Nauvoo, Illinois. So if you know the history of the Mormon Church, there's this guy named Joseph Smith who discovered a gold Bible you'll learn about that he translated. Supposedly this Bible, or this book made of gold plates, was written in like an Egyptian-style language that he was able to translate in the 1820s. Supposedly inspired by God to be able to read this language and convert it into English. And that transcription became a book known worldwide now as the Book of Mormon. And Mormon, the Book of Mormon, is named after one of the prophets written about in the Book of Mormon, who had a son named Moroni, who supposedly buried the gold plates that Joseph Smith, millennia later, was told to dig up and found in a hill called the Hill Cumorah in New York. From there, the Mormon Church and Joseph Smith out of his followings and ended up in Nauvoo, Illinois, which was a swampland and very cheap to buy. So they purchased it, drained all the swamp, and built a city called Nauvoo. They built a temple there, and this temple's been reconstructed by the Mormon Church in the 2000s, the early 2000s. And so they bought up some of the homes that Brigham Young used to have, other people in the Mormon Church. that were there as leaders of the Mormon Church way back when in the 1830s and 40s. They reconstructed a lot of these buildings. In this city is where Joseph Smith and his wife Emma Smith were living when he was killed in a jail. Joseph Smith. From Nauvoo, Illinois is where Brigham Young took all the saints west and went to Utah. And you hear about that pioneering efforts traveling west and settling 3,000 cities from the border of Canada all the way to the Rio Grande River, now known as Idaho, Utah, and Arizona. I mean, they literally settled 3,000 cities, Brigham Young and all the Mormons did out there. So in 2008, I go to Nauvoo, Illinois. Now that's been purchased by the Mormon Church. They've rebuilt the temple that was burned down after Joseph Smith was killed and Brigham Young left. And I decided I want to have a spiritual experience. For me, I wanted a personal spiritual experience. And I would like to liken this to what many, many modern-day Christians find when they go to Israel. And they want to go to Jerusalem, and they want to go see the hill of Golgotha. They want to go see the tomb. They go there expecting when they walk on the same land that Jesus walked on, that they're going to have a spiritual connection with their Savior. I was raised with a similar belief and look at Joseph Smith as this modern-day Moses, as he is called in the Mormon Church and in their doctrines, as someone who was the final person on earth to bring the fullness of Jesus Christ's gospel to the earth through the Book of Mormon. You know how they say you probably shouldn't meet your heroes or your celebrities? You know, that pedestal might just come down when you realize they're just human. This was kind of the moment for me when I got to Nauvoo, unfortunately. And in Nauvoo, they have senior missionaries, which are usually couples who have retired, and they'll go out there and lead carriage rides and tours of the different houses. And they've built kind of the scene of what it would look like in the 1800s. You got your blacksmith shops. You've got brick factories or shops. And so you're just touring around all of this, and we're being toured around, and we're there for several days. But on the second day, I've now listened to several tours we've taken with all my little kids and in-laws, and we're going around these carriage rides, and these seniors keep pointing to Joseph Smith and Emma's cabin over there on the shore of the Mississippi River. I mean, you can see it. It's only like half a block away. There it is over there. And then there's the mansion house right across the catty corner to the little cabin home that they built later after being there, which was built like a hotel to bring in new converts that were moving to Nauvoo and wanted to build homes. They had a place to stay until then. And I want to go take a tour of those two places. Could you imagine going to Israel as a Christian and not being allowed to go see Golgotha or the tomb once you got there? Okay, that would be weird, right? You traveled all that way and you wanted this one moment. Oh, no, you're not allowed to see it. So I'm there, and these seniors, they're taking us around all these other houses. Brigham Young's house. You've heard of the hunting company and gun company Browning. He was a Mormon. His home's there. They give you a tour of that. And I kept asking them, when are you going to take us over to Joe Smith's house? I want to go see the cabin, and I want to go see the mansion house where they lived. And they told me on that second day, I'm sorry, but that's not a part of the tour. And I said, why is it not a part of the tour? And they said, because the Mormon Church doesn't own them. And I said, so? Well, how do you go get a tour of them? Because it looks like they're available to go visit. Nobody's living in them, you can tell. And he said, actually, the church that does own those two properties, they do tours. They turned around and looked at me and said, but the Mormon Church does not allow you to go over there. And they tell us to tell you not to go over there. And I'm like,
That's so weird.
What? I looked at them, looked at my whole family at the time. I said, there is no way I came to Nauvoo and I'm not going over there. It's like 50 steps away from me sometimes, these two houses. I was like, there's no way I'm not walking over there. And they're buried right in front of the cabin on the Mississippi River's bank. Why would I not go look at their gravesite? No. I said, well, what does it take to go do that? To go do that tour? And they said, it's $10 that you have to give to that other church at the time to take this tour. And I said, for $10, I can go have this moment for me that I thought was going to be this amazing spiritual experience? Couldn't believe it. That they told me no. That the church would tell us no. And everybody that goes there is told, no, you can't go there. You can't go over there because you're going to give $10 to that church. They say this. You're not supposed to give money to another church. You're supposed to give all of your tithes and offerings to the Mormon Church. They do say this, by the way. In fact, you're asked every year, in order to keep your temple recommended to go to the church, do you affiliate with or support any organizations that are not the Mormon Church?
Oh,
and you have to say yes or no in order to get that card. So $10 is challenging my entire belief in Mormonism, being raised in this thing, and my commitment and going on a mission and converting people and baptizing them into this church. You're going to tell me I can't go over there for $10. Well, I looked at my whole family and said, are you guys going to listen to them or are you going to go over there? And they all said, we're going to listen to the church and the leaders of the church. So they didn't go. As soon as we get back, I put my kids down for a nap and I went right out the door and started walking over there and went over there and did the tour. And there's a definite reason the church would never want you to go do that tour. Because when I went on this tour, unknowing to me, what I was about to learn literally shook the foundation of my entire testimony of the Mormon Church. And for the next 5 years, I read every book about Joseph Smith Jr. and his wife Emma Smith and her life after he died. I read every single diary, journal written by people who personally knew Joseph Smith back in 1820, 30, 40s before he died in 1844. I wanted to know everything about that guy as a result of one experience in Joseph Smith's home in Nauvoo, Illinois. All it took was one thing said to me, and I was like, whoa, is that true? I've never heard that. And that's where it all started to crumble. And for all of us, there's usually a moment. Like, for example, I talk about health all the time. Well, how many millions of people around the world were convinced vaccines are safe and effective for you, and then you went and got a vaccine for you or your loved one, and then your child died within 48 hours of SIDS, dead in their crib, when 90% of those kids that die of SIDS, you find out through research papers, occurs within 48 hours of a vaccine. Mm-hmm. Then it shakes your reality. Mm-hmm. Or how about an FDA-approved drug and you take it and it causes you to have a seizure? How do you look at the FDA approval process now? Do you just trust all drugs now being approved or with a certificate that says the FDA approved it to be safe and effective for adults and humans? No, there's always something in life that shakes you. And I was shooken.
What did they tell you?
I walked into the mansion house. After going to the cabin first, I went to the cabin. It's just a one-room little cabin. In the 1800s, they're tiny. There's not multiple rooms. There's a little cabin. That was not really that impressive, but it was great to stand in this little building. And it was really cool to look down and see that this is possibly where Joseph Smith and Emma Smith are buried, right in the front steps. To me, that was cool to see. But I didn't really have a spiritual moment. And I didn't know what I was going to expect. It just didn't happen yet. But I was excited to then go over to the mansion house where they spent most of their life in Nauvoo. So we walk across the street and go into the mansion house, and there's this double staircase that goes up to a landing. And I love going into homes that have these dual staircases. I just love them. Yeah. I love them. I love it. I can say that outside of a plantation home or inside of a home or hotel, and I just think it's amazing. Dual staircases going up to a balcony, amazing. And that's exactly how the mansion house is built. We walk in the front door, and there's this young little 20-year-old something tour guide who says to the group of like 7 of us, and I'm the only member of the Mormon Church based in Utah who was in this group. I was the only one. And I'm standing there, and this tour guide goes, I'd like to welcome you into the mansion house. This is the infamous stairwell that you all know about. And I looked at the group, and everybody's like, oh, yeah. Oh, this is where it happened. Oh. And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? What do you mean infamous? You mean famous? This is exactly what I said. And this young little tour guide looks at me and goes, oh, no, not famous, infamous. And I said, oh, what makes it infamous? And this girl looks at me and says, oh, you must not be Mormon. Not a joke. Oh, you must not be Mormon. And I said, wait, what do you mean? Not Mormon. I am as Mormon as they come, I think. And she goes, oh, sorry, what church do you belong to? And I said, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church. And she goes, oh, okay. So you aren't a real Mormon. And I went like this, what do you mean I'm not a real Mormon? Wait, what church are you a part of? And at the time, it was called the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they also called themselves Mormons. Okay, but they considered the Salt Lake Mormons not their true Mormons. That's okay. That has nothing to do with the story. All I'm doing is listening to these people. They're challenging me on whether or not I'm a Mormon or they're Mormon. The other 6 people in this little tour group were members of that other church, and they also call themselves Mormons. I'm learning all kinds of stuff here, right? So I said, okay, well, if I'm not a real Mormon, tell me what the real Mormon church in Salt Lake City that I consider the real Mormon church, what have they not told me? Because the young tour guide looks at me and goes, oh, well, if you're from the Salt Lake City Mormon church, they have flat out lied to you your whole life. So you wouldn't know about this stairwell. And I was like, what? So the girl looks at the group of 6 adults, all older than me, and goes, would any of you like to tell him what makes the stairwell famous? I mean, they all know the story. And I was like, I don't know. And of course, people can make up stories. I got that. I just listened. I said, so what makes the stairwell famous? And they said, then they informed me of a story I've never heard in my whole life, and I have studied Mormon history my whole life. This senior lady looks at me and goes, "Oh, honey, the Mormon Church would never tell you the truth about this house." So, up on the second story, first floor, first door, second door on the right above Emma and Joseph Smith's bedroom, which is downstairs. Emma's home one day all by herself. Joseph is gone somewhere. And there's a young lady living upstairs who is vomiting profusely. She can hear her puking up there. So Emma, being the kind host of her home, having this convert from Canada in this house, who's like 19 or 20 years old, she goes up there to check on this girl who's puking and throwing up, and says to her, "I didn't know you were sick." She goes, "Oh, I'm not sick. I'm pregnant." And Emma says, "You can't be pregnant. You're not married. You came here single. How can you be pregnant? You don't have a husband." In the Mormon Church, it's very much a very powerful thing. You do not have sex before marriage. This has been laid out forever. So she's like, "There's no way that you're pregnant." And she goes, "I am pregnant." "Well, who's the father?" Emma Smith asks. And this girl says, "It's your husband, Joseph. I'm one of his spiritual wives." And Emma had not heard that term. And she then tells him, "Oh, I'm not his only spiritual wife. There's multiple of us here in Nauvoo who have been told by Joseph Smith, your husband, that we have been chosen by God to be a spiritual wife of his." And he tells them this in secret, either through a handwritten note, and says to them, both teenage girls and preteen girls, with a note, that you are to be one of my spiritual wives, and God has told me that if you will consummate that relationship with me through a sexual act, all of your family, parents, siblings, children, all of them will be guaranteed exaltation with God in the celestial kingdom. The Mormon Church lays out that there's 3 degrees of heaven: celestial, terrestrial, telestial, and the top one is the only place God lives. So Joseph Smith was telling all these young people and married women in secret that if you don't tell your husband and don't tell my wife, you just need to know, not everybody understands the ways of God. God's told me you're to be one of my spiritual wives. You just have to consummate. We have to get married in secret. We'll have to have sexual relations in secret to consummate it. If you do that and don't tell anybody, God will promise your entire family exaltation. So I'm listening to this story. Emma Smith learning about this scenario now that Joseph Smith has this secret conspiracy of women and girls out there that he's having sexual relations with, covering it up and calling it spiritual wifery or whiffery. Anyway, Emma Smith was so angry that she threw that lady down the stairs. And they pointed, threw her down these stairs right here. Emma Smith did, from the top, threw her down the stairs in anger. And the trauma of this girl landing on the landing caused her to lose her baby and miscarried. I looked at the group and I was like, really? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, you were also lied to why he was jailed and why he was murdered right after this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at them and I said, okay, well, if this is a true story, did Emma Smith ever write any autobiographies about her life married to Joseph Smith after he died? Because the story of this church that also called themselves Mormons, Emma Smith and one of her sons of Joseph Smith, after he died, and after he got up to an age of 18, they started a different Mormon church based on the Book of Mormon principles still, because Emma Smith really believed he was a prophet of God, but discovering all of these affairs or adulterous acts, actually believed he was a fallen prophet. But didn't fall until after the Book of Mormon. So she still held to the belief of the Book of Mormon and created what was called the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And when Brigham Young took all the Mormons from Nauvoo west, Emma Smith did not go with them. And she told Brigham Young and all the leaders of the Mormon Church, all the other 12 apostles of Joseph Smith, told them, as long as you continue to have this polygamy, affairs with multiple women, and this spiritual celestial marriage, as you call it, to all these other women, if you practice this, I will never be a part of that church. So they went west, but for years and decades, Brigham Young would send people to Missouri and Illinois to get Emma Smith to come join them back in Utah. And she's like, no, because she totally believed he was a fallen prophet because of his adulterous acts that she learned about. And I'm really sorry. She's got a book called Mormon Enigma. You should all read it. that's her book. And she tells you her life story about Joseph Smith. It's not that she didn't trust Joseph Smith her whole life. It was she believed that the ego of becoming a leader of hundreds of thousands of people following him in this religion, that had gotten to him in this power trip of, I can have any woman I want. And just so y'all know, I know it's weird, he actually had 39 current affairs at this point, Emma Smith found out. And the fallout of this knowledge and her demand of a divorce is why Joseph Smith ended up in jail and why it is he ended up murdered. And you were all told it was a mob that killed Joseph Smith. Oh no, there was a bunch of uncles, husbands, grandfathers who were pissed when they found out about the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth was published in a newspaper called the Nauvoo Expositeur, which actually means Nauvoo Exposed. And it was just one paper printed once. And this guy that printed it put it on every front porch of every home in Nauvoo in one morning. And Joseph Smith, because he founded the city, and his 12 apostles, his followers of the leaders of the Mormon Church, were all his city council, and he was the mayor of the city. He got a city council together meeting and said, we're going to declare martial law on that printing press.
Yeah, I remember this.
And he burned it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy who built it went to Springfield and was able to file treason charges for him destroying his right to free speech to publish all of his heinous adulterous acts and pedophilic acts with young girls. But this is the guy that all the people in the Mormon Church sing a hymn to in the Mormon hymnals. Do you actually know what the definition of the word hymn is? It's a song of worship and praise to like a heavenly being. There is a hymn in the Mormon Church called Praise to the Man, and it's all about Joseph Smith. And my last day sitting in the Mormon Church was 5 years later when I heard all the men in the men's group singing this hymn, and it just wrecked me. I had to walk out into the parking lot, wait for my kids to get out of their little kids' classes and Sunday school classes, and I never went back. And so just so you know, I read for 5 years. If you want to know the rest of the story, for 5 years I read books nonstop. As you learned during COVID, Daystar was incredible at making sure that you knew that whatever the information was being published in the media, is that the same as what's being seen by the medical professionals and scientists around the world as they're treating patients? And man, did y'all learn that it was not the same story, not the same narrative as in the media, as what was truth and published in science. So same thing here. The term during COVID that most people are introduced to was, it's those who like vaccines and the anti-vaxxers. I just want you to know the anti phrase in any context is an old cult tactic, and all cultic religions use it. And Mormonism is no different. If you're going to go read a book that the Mormon Church doesn't want you to, they call it anti-Mormonism. Are you reading anti-Mormon literature? Are you reading anything anti-Mormon? Anything not coming from the church, published by the church, approved by the church, is considered anti-Mormon. However, there are millions of Mormons that have left the Mormon Church since the internet was introduced in 1995. Thank God, because the truths are now allowed to be spread throughout the world about the history of the Mormon Church. And I really want all of you to let go your guilt and shame you haven't been able to let go of, because you believe there's something still possible that is true about that church that maybe you should go back and give it another shot. No, you can let it go.
Yeah.
I spent 5 years reading everything that the church has published from its history of the Mormon Church, from its own bookstores. And that entire narrative destroys it all by itself. You can go read the Mormon literature and it will tell you that. Joseph Smith stood up in Kirkland, Ohio in front of all of his followers and said, not even Jesus Christ could create a church and a following like I have. Okay, does this guy actually believe Christ is the Savior?
Yeah.
Or does he believe he's above him? Because he said it. And it's in print, and it used to be in every Mormon church. Now they took those books out of their libraries. You can still get them. They just took them out of print. They didn't want you to read them because the internet made sure you could see them all without buying and going check out the books. So I just want you to know, he's not who you were told he was. He was an adulterer, a whoremonger, a thief, and that's really all he was. Joseph Smith was.
Yeah.
No different than like Jim Jones and the rest of them. They just manipulate the minds and steal from them and lie to them. And want you to convince that only God talks through them for you. And that's not true. It's all about power, greed.
Yeah, and control.
And control.
Yeah. How did you find Jesus amongst, after kind of this, kind of everything you knew kind of crashing down? How are you able to find him in the midst of all that?
Yeah, I've never, ever let go of the fact that God exists. Jesus Christ is our Savior. I've never let that go. That's always been a truth for me and very, very sound belief in me.
But how did you not trash it when you were like, well, this is all? How did you not, what happened? What convinced you?
Yeah, so my perspective, I think common sense rules the day in my brain 24/7, unfortunately. And most of us are manipulated through media and through people to create some other reality of truth. So for me, common sense always ruled the day. So for me, I cannot close my eyes and come up with any other way that this earth was an accident of chaos or some big bang theory. There's no way this wasn't organized.
Yeah.
Watch embryology and the development of a sperm and an egg developing and mutating and changing into a being with multiple organs and an immune system. It can breathe, it can interact with the universe and the earth.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's no way that this was all happenstance or coincidence.
Yeah.
No. And I have greater hope that after this life, there's a greater thing waiting for me. And Jesus Christ's atonement can help me get rid of all the shame and guilt and free me of the bonds of sin and the mortal, obstacles that we confront here. I've never let that go. It's always been there. I believe that there are certain men on this planet who have taken opportunities to twist in their favor the knowledge and awareness of God and his principles that literally govern all of life and manipulate them for their power, greed, and control for their own benefit. And this is something I just had to reconcile. Number one, you have the Bible. The Bible, the Mormon Church, they tell you it's been translated so many times by man, it's lost its original meaning, so you can't trust it. That is the overlooming theme of the Mormon Church. And the Book of Mormon, we have to touch this. You ready?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mormons, you've all been told that the Book of Mormon, as it was written by Joseph Smith in 1822, whenever he finished it, 1820s when he dug it up supposedly. So when he translates this thing, it is stated that the Book of Mormon is the only perfect book on earth and the only one that God translated, and it will never, ever be changed. Go get your books, Mormon, from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. And then I want you to go get a Book of Mormon they've given you recently, anytime in the 2000s. And I want you to explain to me why it is the title page was changed. That's just the first page. And I need you to tell me what they deleted. And then I need you to explain to me why they changed it. Because there's something very specific they deleted. And they never told anybody in the Mormon Church they did it. They didn't hold a conference. They didn't put it in print in their magazines called the Ensign or the New Era. They didn't tell any of you that they changed the writing of the Book of Mormon. And I'm really sorry. The COVID-19 narrative, the reason why it was so successful is it's really a medical mafia, but the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry operates like a cult. Every successful cult-like tactic used by fanatical cult leaders is what they use. I just told you. You want to control the narrative. Tell the Mormons they can't read anything outside the Mormon Church that we say you can read. That is called anti-Mormonism.
Wow.
What do they call anything against vaccines? You're an anti-vaxxer. Okay, This is cult tactics to make sure you don't go look. I just want y'all to know, when I say to you that vaccines are being used to create chronic illness and disease in children, and there's poisons in every one of those vaccines published by the CDC, and I can show you their documents and show you every ingredient inside of there. Like, for example, did you know one of the flu vaccines, the first ingredient listed by the CDC is Medine-Darby canine kidney cells? You're going to hear your medical doctor tell you and your loved ones tell you, you have to get a flu shot every year.
Yeah.
From the time you're 6 months old. And this is going to help your immune system against the flu virus. Okay, do you know that one of the 9 flu vaccines, the first ingredient is Medine-Darby canine kidney cells? Do you know what canine is?
Dog.
It's a dog. So this is a dog's kidney cells. Do you know what a Medine-Darby canine is? That breed is called a Cocker Spaniel. Go look it up. When I say you probably shouldn't be injecting these shots inside of you that have foreign DNA from other animals and have thimerosal mercury, a known neurotoxin, published on the CDC's document. Did you know there's one of the 9 that has barium in it? Do you know that's a radioactive toxin known to cause cancer and death? And it was used to make the atom bomb?
What?
Okay, why is that in your flu vaccines? Okay, I'm really sorry, but to tell you that anything I'm telling you, Dr. Ardis is an anti-vaxxer, is just to keep you from looking. I can look you in the face, any of you in the medical cult who believe it all, and I can go, look, It is dangerous. It has toxic poisons in it. They all have formaldehyde in them. Formaldehyde's a known carcinogen. It doesn't belong in a living tissue. Why would you inject that into babies? And how do you think it's going to help them beat the flu? And why are there antibiotics in all of them? Antibiotics treat bacteria. I thought the flu was a virus. Why are they loaded with antibiotics? Okay. The CDC actually publishes right now that no one being diagnosed with a virus should ever be treated with antibiotics because it could do more harm than good. Well, okay. Why in the flu season are you injecting everybody with antibiotics?
I didn't know they had antibiotics in them.
It's weird. It's called neomycin, kanamycin, and polymyxin. So go look them up.
There's still mercury in them?
Yes.
I thought, because some people are like, oh, they took that out. So they didn't take it out.
Nope.
So that's a heavy toxic metal.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but the anti-vax narrative doesn't work if you just go read and go do your research. So I just want you to know the narrative is to keep you from looking at the truth so that you just follow our belief system. Just believe us. We are the leaders sitting up in the Mormon Church in our suits and ties. We are the representatives of Christ. This is what they tell you. Sitting up here, listen to us, follow us. And then you got your white coats. This is no different. These are two cults. And yes, it is a cult. I'm really sorry. If you look up the definition of a cult, look up religion, look up religious cult definition. It is what Mormonism is. It's not the only one. It's just one.
Wait, give the definition.
So if you go look up the book, Freedom of Mind by Steve Hassan, look up page 4. There's only 4 types of cults: religious cults, a therapeutic cult, a political cult.
Oh, wow.
And a commercial cult. Those are the 4. And you go diving into what those are. The political cult definition, by the way, perfectly defines everything related to COVID-19. The religious cult is everything you're going to see in Mormonism. It's all a control. It's all to control you is all their narrative. So for some reason, they would lie to you and keep this information out and change it right underneath your nose and knowing you're never going to look or even question it. So I had a lot of questions, and I had a whole lot of books from the Mormon bookstore. And when I decided I was going to leave the Mormon Church, I actually went and met with my bishop. I'd actually told him to kick me out of the church. And then he called Salt Lake and asked them if he could kick me out. And they said, no, your job is to keep him in. So he called me and asked me if I'd come in. And I said, sure, I'll come in. So I came into his office, and then he wanted to meet with me. And I said, great, I'd like to meet with you. In fact, can we just do this every Tuesday night for a year? And for an entire year, this incredible human being invited me into his office for hours, from 7 to 9 every Tuesday night. And I would actually bring in one book from the Mormon bookstore after another, diary, journal from people who personally knew Joseph Smith. And I would ask him, do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this is published by the church? Do you know this is in our history books of the Mormon Church? And he'd go, no, I don't know any of this stuff. And I go, great. By the time I come back next Tuesday, you're supposed to find out why it is I'm supposed to reconcile still being okay with this Mormon Church and believing Joseph Smith is a prophet of God with this new knowledge you have. So please go call Salt Lake and figure it out. For 52 weeks straight. And every week I heard the same thing every week from the heads of Salt Lake. Tell Brother Ardis that we don't know all the ways of God. He's just going to have to wait till judgment when he meets him one day, and he can ask him those questions. You just need to have faith that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, Book of Mormon is true, and this is the only true church on the earth. And I said, that will never be an answer I'm going to be okay with. Ever. Because everything Joseph Smith was doing, everything he was guilty of, everything he was doing, they shame and guilt every Mormon member that they can't ever do any of this stuff. But you have to look at this guy as if he's some prophet of God.
Wow.
So I have a hard time with that. So, and in order to get into heaven, of course, you've got to pay 10% of your income for the rest of your life to be able to go into a temple. And I'm okay with tithes and offerings. I totally love that.
Yeah.
So giving back is always wonderful. And but the idea that you have to do that,
But you're like paying for your salvation in a way.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that's not the only way it works.
I'm sorry, but the only way you can get to the celestial kingdom in heaven is to be able to have to be a current temple recommend holder, which is what that little card's called when the church says, "Yep, you're righteous enough to come into our temples."
So, do you think though everything that you went through, do you think it helped to prepare you to identify the cult in the medical field and to help you question the narrative and find the truth?
This is awesome. Thank you. You're a great host.
Oh, thanks.
That is the perfect follow-up question here.
Oh.
Because I've said it over and over and over. If you go look up USA Today, Washington Post, look up New York Times, look up Reuters, look up factcheck.org and PolitiFact, go look them up and type in my name, Dr. Ardis, on any of their websites, you will see just hit piece after hit piece.
Yeah.
That everything I have projected, shared, research, studied, testified in Capitol buildings around the United States in relationship to COVID, everything is being challenged as it is fake, disinformation, blah, blah. Yes. And people would constantly ask me, Dr. Ardis, how do you keep showing up at these press conferences? And how do you stand up here and keep testifying to all of this stuff with a smile when the whole world's hating on you? Man, my whole life, guided by God himself as an adult. I can tell you, God talks to me, and it ain't just in peaceful feelings, notions, tingling in my body. No, he will speak audibly to people too. And he will speak audibly to me, and I've heard phrases, words, and if I follow what he says, life has always been miraculous for me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I want you to know, I've always said, do you really think it matters what a journalist says about me or some medical doctor says about me, like in my claims about remdesivir or the vaccines or the venom aspect of COVID? Do you really think I really care when they say nicotine is going to cure COVID, which, by the way, is the perfect vaccine for all things COVID, is nicotine? From the very beginning, they knew this. Okay, I always say, why would I care what these people who have no meaning in my life, why would I care what they say about me or what they think about me? Because these people they don't mean much to me in my life. My father-in-law was killed in the hospital in February 2020 using a protocol identical to what they used for COVID-19 patients. And I had to let everybody know this is a very deadly protocol. And the medical profession woke up. All the medical doctors realized the research I gave was true about remdesivir, coined the phrase, run, death is near. And man, thousands upon thousands, maybe millions around the world eventually, but thousands around the world have walked up to me and said that my information saved their loved one's life, kept their loved ones in a hospital, helped them get out of a hospital, and saved their lives. And they believe that was a credit to my relentless effort to spread the truth to them. But I do think one thing's going to be very cool here. All right, so you touched on the Mormonism, the cult, religious cults. I mentioned there's religious cults and political cults. I want to say something here because this is going to help with the COVID narrative too. If you read Steve Hazan's book, Freedom of Mind, written in 2016, if you'll go read that book, page 4, you'll see the definitions of the 4 major types of cults. What I was most intrigued by is I'd never heard of a political cult. We're all familiar with religious cults. We watch the documentaries all the time. Steve Hazan defines a political cult as this. In order for a political cult to be successful, they have to do 2 things. They have to control the media, and they have to stop gatherings of people. Do you remember what they did in the beginning of COVID?
Yeah.
Did the government control the narrative, control the media?
Oh, yes.
Did they isolate you
Yes.
from gathering in groups? Yes. When you go into the political cult information in the rest of the book, when he dives into it further, what you learn is that political cults will often, if they cannot grasp with just controlling the media and isolating people, if they can't get their people to conform to their wishes and demands, the political cult will adopt one particular tactic of the religious cult leaders. You know what that tactic is? And it is, I could not believe it when I read it. The political cult will engage all of their followers and require them to wear a specific article of clothing.
Which has happened throughout history.
Okay, now let's just take the COVID narrative, right? For the first 10 months, what did you hear from Anthony Fauci? Do
You have to
masks
wear a
work
mask.
or do masks not work? He fumbled over and over for the first 8 to 10 months of COVID. He's like,
I remember that.
masks aren't going to work. Yeah, masks are going to work. Yeah, maybe 2 masks are going to work.
Yeah,
Remember,
gosh.
4 masks, the more's better. Right, you remember this narrative? Then all of a sudden it went from this discussion about masks maybe working or not working to everybody has to wear a mask. Remember this?
Yes, and you were ostracized if you did not.
So, in the context of Mormonism, what's the article of clothing?
The underwear.
The underwear. What do they tell you in the Mormon Church? They tell you have to wear temple garments, is what they call them. And you have to have a temple regimen in order to wear them. So you have these temple garments that have Masonic symbols all over them that represent different things. And you have to wear them every day of your life.
Oh, my God.
And this is what they tell you. It's okay for those who believe it's okay. I wore them for 20 years of my life, okay? Every day, just like they told me. I was the Peter priesthood. So they tell you to wear cotton underwear men, silk underwear women, top and bottom, and they tell you this. As long as you will wear that, Satan can no longer tempt you and cannot physically hurt you. I think I was born for this time of life on earth. recognizing that these are cult-like control factors.
Wow.
It was very obvious when COVID came out and Fauci finally said all people around the world have to wear a mask. Even in your car alone, you have to wear a mask. You have to wear
crazy.
In order to ingrain the doctrine any cult is trying to get you to buy, if they're not buying it by just pummeling you with nonstop flood of media narrative, and they can't get you to just believe it and isolate you and just pummel you with all that narrative, if that's not working, get them to wear an article of clothing. What does it do? So when you put on your Mormon garments, you believe Satan can't tempt you as long as you're wearing them, and he can't physically hurt you. They tell you a bullet won't penetrate you. You can't even be burned alive as long as you have your garments on. Okay, great. What'd they tell you about the mask? Put on this cotton mask that has no antiviral property whatsoever, no proven efficacy to actually reduce respiratory infections of any kind ever. This is not a medical device. Okay.
Yeah.
They then told you have to wear it every single day in order to what? Prevent from inhaling a deadly respiratory pathogen. How is that different than the Mormon garments? Bullets, fires, pitchforks, darts, and arrows of Satan and physical. This is going to protect you. It's no different. They finally were able to control the world by getting people to literally, physically, you learn about it in the book, cult leaders, they do this. They'll ask you to wear an article of clothing. A lot of religious cults like the Nexium one, all the leaders had to wear a sash every day. And when you put it on, you physically are telling yourself why it is that cult told you to wear it. And when people started being told they had to wear it, and when you physically put it around your ears every day and put it on your face, every time you do that, you further ingrain the belief of the narration coming from the cult leaders, which is Big Pharma. And just so y'all know, if y'all haven't realized this yet, who really rules the world? Big Pharma does. Pharmaceutical industry does. They do control the world. In fact, I would like you to take some context here. Some religions control your whole world. My whole world was controlled by a religion. The pharmaceutical industry controls all of it, including religion, which is why the Mormon leaders, the Pope, all in unison, actually told you all. What did they all say? This is amazing to me. Okay, these are the leaders of religions and supposedly the oracles with God, speaking for God on the earth. What did they tell you in unison for the last 4 years the world needed more than anything else? It wasn't faith in God. It wasn't getting on your knees and praying. It wasn't building your relationship with God. It wasn't trusting God's natural immunity put inside of you. No, what did they tell you? The Pope, Mormon Church leaders, everyone needs to get a COVID-19 vaccine. The Pope himself said, right now, the world needs only 2 things, vaccines and defunding our militaries around the world and loosening our borders. Okay, really? I want to ask you something. If Jesus' return and second coming was during COVID, do you believe he would have wore a mask? Do you believe he would have said, bring me all the children to me except the unvaccinated ones?
Mm-mm.
Do you think he would have ever?
No. He was not afraid. He was around lepers.
Do you think he would have went to the Home Depot parking lot to get his COVID-19 vaccine?
No.
So he could travel to the other countries he was promising to come visit?
No, he was just going to go wherever his father told him to.
Right. So if you want to be more Christ-like, why don't you trust what Christ and God created in you, which is you and your immune system? I, Bryan Ardis, Dr. Ardis, have more faith in God's pharmacy called nature than you do. And if you believe that this perfect created baby in the womb of you or your loved one, and that baby comes out and you look at that perfect 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes on each foot, and you're like, look at this miracle God made. You know what the first thing is that man and science and pharmaceutical industry tells you?
Inject the baby.
This beautiful baby designed and created by God that you believe is in the image of God, actually, supposedly you believe that. There's a man in a white coat or a woman in a white coat standing right next to you saying, we need to take this creation by God and we need to inject it with a hepatitis B vaccine.
It's crazy.
Because God forgot an immune system. Okay, I didn't vaccinate my kids. I have 5 kids, 4 more adults now. Never vaccinated. Went through public school, universities, none of them. And they're all healthy. No drugs, no antibiotics, no nothing. And they're completely healthy. So is it true that in order to be healthy, you have to have man's injections inside of you for your immunity? No, this is the deception that God's design, you are flawed and you need man's lab-created science injected inside of you or drugged. Or you'll hear this phrase, You don't really need your spleen. You don't really need your gallbladder. You don't really need your appendix. Okay, who put those in there?
God.
Oh, do you think he just got tired after 6 days of creation and he just screwed up on day 6, took a nap, threw in some extra organs that you really didn't need?
No.
Who tells you this stuff isn't necessary? And since when is being pregnant a medical condition? It's actually called a medical condition.
Really?
Really? Really?
Crazy.
I mean, God told Adam and Eve to leave the garden and go do what?
Be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. How is that a medical condition?
Yeah.
How is all of life that God created on this earth, all the animals, all the species on the planet, how can they repopulate and it not be a medical condition? They're all out in the woods giving birth to babies, deer, elk, moose.
Yeah.
And none of them need a C-section and none of them need a vaccine when they're born. And these species have lasted the millennia the earth's been around.
Yeah.
You are too. And just, when you're reading Revelations 18:23, pay attention. In the last days, what is written that will deceive all nations of the earth in the last days?
Mm-hmm.
You will read it now in the New English translations. You will all be deceived by witchcraft and sorcery. What's the original word they replaced for sorcery and witchcraft? Which is what you read in there now.
Is it pharmakia?
It's pharmakia.
It's pharmakia in the
Yes.
Greek? Oh, no.
So just so you know,
Sorry, y'all. I'm just geeking out over here.
you're living in the last days, man, and you should pay attention.
Yeah, totally.
In fact, if you want to shock your audiences right now, there's the medical cult, there's religious cults. I mean, there's all kinds of cults. All right. Our buddy, Dr. Richard Bartlett, sent this to me 3 years ago, and he goes, "Did you see this? I want you to show the graphic of Time Magazine, January 11th, 1999.
Okay.
And for all of you who think, God, if I just had a kid that would become a medical doctor, my life would be amazing and I could just brag about my kid being an MD, I want you to read the title of the cover of Time Magazine, January 11th, 1999, which is in last century. We're in the 2000s now, okay? It actually reads across the front, "The Future of Medicine." So if you're wondering what your kids are going to get into or you wanting to be a medical professional, what you're getting into, Time Magazine laid it out for you. What is the future of medicine? And they have a subtitle to the title of what the future of medicine looks like. It's all right on the cover. And it reads this, and I'm quoting, "How genetic engineering will change us in the next century." Okay, so I want you to sit with that for a minute. The future of medicine, pharmakia, the medical industry, they're telling you what their goals are. They literally wrote how genetic engineering will change us in the next century. Do you believe God's design, the human body, this temple of our soul and spirit, do you believe it needs to be changed and God screwed up in its design? Then why are we trusting science to change us? And if you look at the illustration, this is very important, by the way. If you look at the illustration behind the title, The Future of Medicine, it is just one double-stranded DNA God gave us.
Yeah.
Double-stranded DNA. And half of your DNA is changed into something else, not human. It is a double DNA strand, and half of the DNA helix is a serpent. It's a snake.
No.
Yes, and you should put it on the screen. All of you lovers of pharmakia and medicine, just know this is the goal of pharmakia. In fact, I believe since the Garden of Eden,
Yeah, I was going to say that.
when God said to the serpent, Lucifer, "You may be able to bruise the seed of the woman's heel, but they will be able to crush thy head." I believe the seed of the serpent has literally been the efforts of pharmakia forever, is to how do we intermingle the seed of Satan into the seed of man,
Yep.
which is exactly what was forbidden in the Garden of Eden. And I believe man, science, and medicine has constantly been trying to figure out how to alter God's creation. It doesn't need changing. It's perfect. If you believe God's all-knowing, all-power, and omniscient, why are you trusting a profession to change us? Why do you need to be changed? Science wants you to believe they have figured out the human body and they can design it better than God did. That should be appalling to all Protestants around the world.
Yeah.
All of you should be angry at that. And all of you should be going like this, I think I should back away from these people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the technology, do you know, that they are actually illustrating
What's
this DNA being half serpent, half human.
What's it called? I know the name, but it's like escaped me.
It's called CRISPR technology.
Yes.
So CRISPR technology now, the governments of the whole world and pharmaceutical industries have been pumping in billions of dollars of research. And you know what they say? We can ultimately delete certain genes out of your DNA that your parents gave you at conception. We're going to delete certain genes that cause you to be at higher risk for developing breast cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. We're going to delete those genes, and we're going to put in a different gene in its place. CRISPR is what it's abbreviated, CRSPR. CRSPR is CRISPR. All right, so Holland Roche is the Roche company, owns the patent on that technology. CRSP, I need you to look up what CRSP is in science. CRSP stands for cysteine, cysteine, rich secretory proteins, secreted proteins. Look up what a CRISP is, and you should be appalled. CRISPs are universally found in snakes' venom.
Really?
Yeah. They're actually wanting to delete human DNA genes and insert serpent reptile genes in its place. And then they're going to promise you the human being is greater than it was the way God designed it. That's your future of medicine.
Transhumanism.
So, when I say I have more faith in God's pharmacy and nature than you do, if you're vaccinating your kids when they're born, you obviously believe God failed at producing an immune system to defend itself. And I have a big problem with that. So, are we out of time, or can I tell you a story?
No, you can tell us a story. Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I just have to add on to your point, because you said on that cover of Time magazine, there was how the snake is trying to basically infiltrate the human DNA. That has been the spiritual battle for the last thousands of years, because when God prophesied that and said to Eve that from your seed would come the Messiah and he will crush the head of the serpent, the devil began to rage a war on our DNA.
Amen.
And if you research that, there's a whole thing there. That's where all the whole Nephilim, all of that comes from. That was where the mixing of the sons of God with the daughters of man. That's in the Bible. And then
How did God feel about genetic engineering? And the mixing of these species?
He brought a flood and wiped out and then he wiped out all of the Nephilim that way. And then the ones that were left behind, he raised up a nation of people, Israel, to take them out. And we see that with King David and others like that. And all that being said, there's an incredible book by Michael Heiser. It's called Reversing Herman. And he talks about how Jesus came to undo the curse that the Watchers put on the earth. And just how the enemy came, the devil came to mix with our DNA and to taint us. God came, incarnation. He joined with our human DNA to basically save us.
Amen.
So there's
Beautiful
a whole spiritual component there. I had to say, like, it's all interconnected, and that's why it makes so much sense. But there's so many innocent people in the cult who don't see the spiritual component. They don't see the connections because they've been lied to and brainwashed their whole lives.
In fact, every aspect of medicine, you stay on that point, every aspect of medicine, every industry of medicine, if you see an ambulance, what's the logo on the side of the ambulance?
That snake around that pole.
What is the symbol of the American Medical Association?
Is it that snake again?
A serpent around the pole.
Yeah, I never caught that. I was like, what is this?
What is the World Health Organization's logo? It's the whole earth with a target over it and a serpent on top of it. So
and symbols matter.
And symbols matter. And if you go on the World Health Organization's website right now, they actually have a frequently asked questions section, and it says, where did the logo come from? You should read the paragraph. It actually states that the serpent around the staff is a symbol of the cult of Asclepius, which is a Greek god.
Oh, I think I've researched this.
And it actually reads, this symbol represents the cult of Asclepius and stems from him because he led a cult, I'm quoting, their cult worshipped snakes. It's on the World Health Organization website. All right, great. Okay. That's number one. Number two, now can I tell my story real quick here?
Yes, I wanted to hear it.
So my second kid is born. My first kid was vaccinated for the first 10 months because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Then I learned about vaccines studying the CDC's documents. He has never been vaccinated ever since. He's 24 years old. Since I had 4 kids, none of them have ever been vaccinated. They're all very healthy. But my second boy, Braden, is born in a hospital in Dallas, Texas. And at this point, I wasn't going to vaccinate my kids anymore. And I had more faith in God's creation. And science didn't have to do anything to it. I thought it was perfect. So my son's born. Nurse comes walking in the room as they're cleaning up the baby and says, I need you to sign this paper. And I said, what's that paper? And she said, it's a form that allows us to vaccinate your kid. And I said, no, I need you to give me the form that says, I don't allow you to. And she looks at me. Now, this is in 2003. She looks at me and she goes, wait, you're not going to vaccinate your kid? And I said, no, I'm not. And I need the form that says, I'm not letting you do that. So there's an exemption form somewhere. She had a little clipboard, those boxed gray clipboards, that have a whole bunch of forms and pens and stuff in it. On top of it was a clipped, stack of papers this thick, forms. She was only looking at the top one. And I said, no, I just need to go talk to your boss or your manager or somebody and go get me the exemption form. I'm going to sign that. I don't want you giving it to him. As she starts walking out the door, because she didn't know where this form was, she's flipping through all those forms and sees it's the second to the last form in this stack. So she comes walking over without leaving the room and goes, oh, here it is. Here's the exemption form. And I said, oh, thanks. I signed it. And then she's flipping one more paper, which is the last one. And it is specifically the hepatitis B vaccine. And she goes, oh, sorry, there's another one. And she goes, it's for the hepatitis B vaccine. Are you going to give this to him? Now, parents out there, all of you, you're told in America within 24 hours of a baby born on the soil of America, they have to be vaccinated for the hepatitis B vaccine or virus. I looked at this girl and I'm like this, for sure I'm signing that one. And she pulled the clipboard from me and she wouldn't let me sign it. And I said, no, I need you to let me sign that. And she goes, Mr. Ardis. And I was in school at the time. I wasn't a doctor yet. She goes, Mr. Ardis, you're not going to vaccinate your kid for the hepatitis B virus? And I said, no, for sure I'm not doing that. And she goes, you do know that the hepatitis B virus can live on a doorknob for up to 24 hours. This is exactly what she said. And this was exactly my immediate response. How long have you worked here? And she goes, 7 years. And I said, in this neonatal unit of the hospital? Yes. I said, can I ask you a question? Yeah. You just told me that the hepatitis B virus can live on a doorknob for 24 hours. Can you tell me how many newborns you've seen reach up and open a door in this hospital?
Yeah.
And she did just what you did. She laughed. It's like, no. Well, then why'd you say that? What's the risk?
Yeah.
If newborns don't reach up and grab doorknobs, why would you say to me it can live on a doorknob for 24 hours? Not a joke. She went just like this. I don't know why I said that. I said, I do. And I said, however, I would like to ask you a question. If you haven't seen a newborn open a door in this hospital, and that's not how he's going to get the hepatitis B virus that he needs to be vaccinated for, how does a human being get hepatitis B? Do you know that answer? And she goes, yes, she should from nursing school.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, I do. I said, how? She goes, from sex with multiple partners, unprotected sex. And then number 2, she said it, is drug needle sharing.
Yeah.
And I looked at her again and I went, that's good. I need you to close your eyes for me. She closed her eyes. After a few seconds of me asking her several times, she closed her eyes and I said, good, I need you to review the last 7 years of your life in this hospital. And I literally said this to her. This is the common sense of Dr. Ardis. I said, have you ever walked by the window in the nursery in this hospital at night and looked inside those little plastic bins of all the babies in there? And have you ever seen those babies having sex with each other, jumping in and out of those little baskets? And she goes, no. I said, have you ever walked by there and saw them flipping to the next plastic bin, syringes to the other one to share? No. I said, in fact, the only syringes they get are the ones you inject inside of them. I said, so I have a question for you. What's the urgency within 24 hours to vaccinate a kid for a virus you only get with drug needle sharing and having sex with multiple partners? Why do I have to give that to my kid within 24 hours of being born? And she goes, I don't know. And I said, I have another question for you. When you know stuff, cult-like indoctrination and the repeated narration they are fed suddenly starts not making any sense to them. So this is where rational common sense helps. And I just looked at her and I said, okay, what is the immune life of that vaccine? Do you know how long it lasts to provide immunity? And she goes, no. I said, it's rumored in science to be 12 years. And I looked at her and I went, that's great. Now I need you to close your eyes again for me, please. And I'm dead serious. This is in the middle of the room. I need you to do this for me, please. Close your eyes. Good. I need you to review your whole life, not the last 7 years. I need you to review your whole life, and I want you to tell me how many 12-year-olds you know in your whole life who have multiple sex partners and do intravenous drug sharing of needles with their buddies all at the same time. Hey, I just did heroin. My 12-year-old, here 12-year-old do it too. Have you ever seen it? And I said, just tell me one. She actually sat there and started shaking her head a few seconds later, and she goes, I honestly can't think of one. I said, why are we doing this to every baby that's born in America then? And I looked at her and I said, wouldn't it be smarter, don't you think, to maybe give it, if you're going to give it at all, give it to a 12-year-old? If it's going to last 12 years, it'll last through middle school, high school, and college till they're 24. Why are we doing it when they're babies? I want to make you all aware right now, all of you who are watching right now going, we should still be vaccinating our babies for hepatitis B within 24 hours. Okay, great. Have you looked up the ingredients of the hepatitis B vaccine? And do you know that the first ingredient listed is MRC-5 by pharmaceutical industries? Do you know what that is? You should look it up. Type in MRC-5 in Google, hit enter, and click the Wikipedia page and read the first paragraph. It reads, this is cells of the lungs of an abortal fetus that was aborted at 14 weeks old in 1969. Any of you who are not okay with abortions, by the way, I'd like to ask you, how do you think injecting aborted baby fetal tissue of a baby murdered in the 60s, how does that provide immunity to the hepatitis B? And if you didn't know that was in there, how come you didn't know? Just so you know, you inject DNA of babies that have been aborted or murdered, and you inject animals' DNA inside of you, you trigger a lifelong autoimmune reaction and disease in that human.
Ugh.
And now the pharmaceutical industry, who believes you need to be changed in the next century, which we're sitting in, just know, when you put foreign DNA into a human from another animal or another human, you trigger autoimmunity. This is why all organ transplant recipients are put on auto-rejection drugs for the rest of their life to shut off their immune system from killing the organ that is not them. This is no different with the vaccines. You inject DNA into the bloodstream of these humans, you are creating an overreactive immune system leading to detrimental effects and chronic illness the rest of your life.
I need to ask you though, so the big thing right now is the whole measles thing. What would you say to that? Because everyone's deathly afraid of measles, and what happens is people who are anti-vaxxers get looked down on because we're basically demonized, saying that we're causing everyone to get sick. So what would your response to that be?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so first, measles is not a deadly infection. It's not going to kill the majority of all people that get measles. My own wife had measles as a kid, survived that, and she's incredible.
So that's one thing. So in the past, it was common for everyone to get, because I know there's an episode of the Brady Bunch where they had a measles party where they all, because they wanted to get immunity. So
just like the chicken pox parties when we were kids.
Yeah. So what happened?
All right, so vaccines happened. They still have to sell you a narrative that vaccines are your best option for health and immunity. Like God didn't design the human body well enough to defend itself against the measles. This is going to be fun. You ready? Mm-hmm. So RFK Jr., the chairman now of the HHS, Secretary for the Human Health and Human Services, did a couple press releases and interviews of the families of individuals who lost children recently in Texas to the measles. Just remember, they died in hospitals. Just like every COVID-19 patient. They all died in hospitals. So what are they doing there? And what medications do they use in there? They all have side effects. Who knows? All right, so I just want to remind everybody, it's not the MMR vaccines, which is measles, mumps, and rubella, which is your only alternative for treating the measles or preventing them. By far. The NIH has published right now on their website 2 research studies that actually proved in 2020 and again in 2021 that the measles virus can be prevented and treated. If you have the measles currently, it can treat it and stop the replication of the measles virus with one vegetable God made. Want to guess what it is? It's garlic.
Ha! Sorry, I'm looking at my husband. I love garlic. We just talked about this morning.
Garlic is a published known preventative agent. If you consume it weekly or take garlic supplements or garlic food items, it doesn't matter. If you eat garlic clove or if you actually supplement garlic, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It prevents the measles and it treats the measles and stops it from replicating in a human being. And guess who made garlic?
God. Garlic does a lot of stuff.
And guess who made you?
God.
And guess what he told you? We'll put you in Eve's place in the garden. He said, the previous 5 days of creation, I put everything down here for the benefit of man.
Yeah.
You know what? We know what one of those plants were? Garlic.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to remind everybody, make sure RFK knows too. You can stop talking about the measles vaccine agenda is the only way to actually address it. No, God has given us many cures for measles. Oh, can I give you another great lie?
Yes, please.
Okay. You were actually told all around the world that viruses, specific viruses like the HPV virus, human papilloma virus, which all kids in America get Gardasil for, vaccines in middle school.
That one's really bad.
Yes, it's horrible. In fact, you should read the label. It says kids can get HPV virus from our vaccine. Okay, they tell you that virus causes cancer in the future.
Crazy.
And we're vaccinating you for it, but it can give it to you. Okay, that sounds smart. So anyway, I just want you to know HPV virus, hepatitis C virus, hepatitis B virus, they all say these cause specific cancers. Epstein-Barr virus linked to Burkitt's lymphoma and Hodgkin's lymphoma. They all say these viruses cause cancer. You're also told there's seasonal viruses, influenza virus, common cold virus. All common cold seasons are caused by what they call coronaviruses. Those are common cold viruses. All right, so do you know what language, like you mentioned Greek when I said pharmakia earlier about the book of Revelations. Do you know what language the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry is beholding to that no other industry does? In fact, every anatomy in your body is in this language that you've learned. Every pharmaceutical is based in this language. Every diagnosis is based in this language. And it's not English.
Is it Latin?
It is Latin. Very good. Great job. All right, so Latin is the language that the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry holds itself to. And there's a reason why they do it. This is to deceive all of you, by the way. It's very easy to deceive you. So if they use words that you don't use in English every day, and they say their words in Latin to you, they look like some superior being with a knowledge that you don't have. But the truth is, for example, I'll just give you one example. The Latin word for joint is arthra, A-R-T-H-A, arthra, A-R-T-H-A. And when you actually add the Latin suffix itis, means inflammation of or pain in, arthritis is what joint pain is. So when you tell your doctor, my joint hurts, this joint hurts, it hurts when I move, the doctor is going to write down arthritis and then run your blood test, run your x-ray, CT scans, and you're going to come back for your report of findings and your diagnosis. And they're going to tell you have arthritis, Mary. And you're going to be like, I knew it. The truth is they just said to you in Latin what you said to them in English.
Oh, wow.
And they look brilliant. You have joint pain. That is your language. They just said it to you in a different language. You have joint pain. Yeah, I know. They just said it in Latin. Latin is what they behold to. Makes things look mysterious, complex, scientific. We don't understand your terminology. We can't understand it because we don't know Latin. Did you know the word virus has historically, it is only a Latin word. Did you know that the Latin word virus, which all of you were just told about the COVID-19 virus, affected the whole world? The flu viruses, measles virus, you're hearing about all these. Do you know that viruses in Latin has only one definition?
What is it?
Poison, comma, especially of snake's venom.
Really?
4 centuries now of Latin dictionaries tell you the word virus has only one definition. It's a poison or venom. And if it doesn't read poison, comma, especially of snake's venom, it reads poison, comma, venom. And that's it. When you look at the English to Latin side of the dictionaries, because they're divided, Latin to English, English to Latin, half the dictionary is Latin to English, half of it's dictionary to English to Latin. When you look up the word venom, which is an English word and is not a Latin word, the English word venom for 4 centuries now only translates to one Latin word. Would you like to guess what it is?
Is it virus?
It is virus. If a virus is a poison,
Yeah.
particularly a venom, and the English word venom literally translates to only one word in Latin for 400 years now, meaning venom, I'd like to ask you, how is it possible then that there are actually viral seasons every year? How can there be a flu virus season every year?
Why is that?
I mean, because if it's truly a poison or a venom, then you actually should write it in English. Influenza, poison, comma, venom season. Then my question for you is, how do they create these seasons if viruses are poisons or venoms?
You inject them into people?
What do they encourage every flu season starting in August in America and wherever else it's fall around the world?
To get your flu shot.
It's time to get your flu shot. And I just told you just a few ingredients in all of the 9 flu vaccines. And most of them are known chemicals or poisons. A viral season is just a poison venom season. And what's amazing is, this may shock you, COVID-19's spike proteins were identified by DNA labs around 5 different countries. When they ran the spike proteins of COVID, they were identified to be the venoms of 20 different snakes, 16 different venomous creatures in the ocean.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Oh, and if you look up the rabies virus, did you know the rabies virus has a spike protein on it called RGP, abbreviated by science? And in every research study where they tell you what this spike protein of rabies is that causes dogs to be so infectious and bats to be so dangerous to humans.
Yeah.
Did you know that they publish in Science that the spike protein of rabies, these are the exact words, are identical to snake venom proteins? Sorry, did you know that HIV's glycoprotein 120 is published by Medical Science? I'm quoting from their research studies, and I've showed the world nonstop that the HIV glycoprotein 120 is identical, and the word in science is homologous. Homologous to snake venom proteins. How does snake venom end up on HIV virus?
Yeah.
How did snake venom end up on rabies virus? How did snake venom wrap itself around a bat virus they called COVID-19? That's why I wrote the book, Moving Beyond the COVID-19 Lies, so you can really understand what DNA experts around the world figured out COVID-19 symptoms really were. And did you hear people like Zev Zelenko, who probably came on Daystar, Dr. Zev Zelenko, talk about zinc?
Yes.
Zinc is the cure for COVID, and everybody learned about zinc.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those docs preaching about zinc too. Did you know that one of the 36 venoms found in every single COVID-19 positive patient's bodies, that protein is called, from the venom of these snakes, is called a zinc metalloproteinase? And do you know what that means? That venom depletes the mammal or the prey of all of its zinc reservoirs to lead to death. What did you find during COVID was saving everybody's life? Zinc was. Why? Because the venoms of the spike proteins of COVID, as they call them spike proteins. They're actually venom proteins. And they have been used for centuries to make you sick and call it a virus. It's very interesting.
Wait, so you're basically saying that these things were created?
Oh, 100%.
Because there's no way that that would be natural.
Yeah. How would you isolate individual proteins out of venom that has hundreds and thousands of venom proteins in it?
No.
How would you get just singular ones found in all these people's bodies all over the world?
So I'm
confirmed by DNA, by the way. This isn't me. This is DNA testing.
So I'm thinking about the person watching this in pure horror, which I remember the first time I sat down with RFK Jr. and Del Bigtree and just doctors like you guys. Well, they're not doctors, but you're a doctor. But people
remember that, by the way. Donald Trump, a real estate developer. RFK Jr. is an attorney. Del Bigtree, I don't know what he does, but he's a great. All these are great guys. I love them all. I've met them all many times. Okay.
Yeah.
They're all great, but none of them are health professionals.
Yeah.
And they're leading the Make America Healthy Again movement. That's okay, but they need a whole lot of advice from the people who have more faith, I believe, in nature and natural principles.
From the right
who have
people.
coached people on how to restore their health.
Okay, so then you're the perfect person to ask. What does someone do? If you're like me and you received, I was born after 89, so that's when they started upping up all the vaccines. They started giving, I was one of the Hep B babies.
Sure.
My mom didn't know. She was mortified later on. What does someone do when they've just been vaccinated so many times? How do you heal?
Yeah, this is a great question. All right, so unfortunately, it's very true. Once you look at all the ingredients in the vaccine schedule for all kids and adults from
Now
the time
it's
they're
even
born.
more.
When I was vaccinated before 1986, I was born in 1976, but by the age of 10, I'd only gotten 8 shots. That was the normal
Yeah.
for my whole childhood. That was normal. Now it's 72 shots before the age of 18. So
I'm so concerned for the future generations, honestly.
So please remember, God made you perfectly. Why do you keep injecting it with stuff thinking God did not give you an immune system? I don't understand how so many people fall for this. It is a huge, massive propaganda machine
Yeah.
to create, it's called the Hegelian dialect. Create the problem, sell the solution. They are creating illnesses through poisoning our air, water, artificial processed foods and sweeteners and all this crap in their food. They're literally poisoning your food supply, air, water supply.
They are.
And then drugs, and they're vaccinating you with poisons and abortal fetal tissue and dogs' kidney cells that don't belong in your body.
Yeah.
Why would you ever think this was going to help your immune system? God made it perfectly. Okay, let's just answer this for everybody here, okay? Do you know when the immune system of a baby can make its own antibodies to protect it against infections it will encounter in life? Do you know what age a baby is When its nervous system, the brain and spinal cord that oversees your immune system, when is it fully developed to be able to make its own antibodies?
Is it 6 months?
It's 3 years old.
3 years old? Okay.
This should be a problem for everybody watching this, by the way. What do they tell you? You should vaccinate your kid with all these vaccines before the age of 2 so that their body makes antibodies to fight an infection. Really? The nervous system of a baby can't even do that until it's 3 years old fully. Why do we vaccinate anybody before the age of 3?
So it's a total scam.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where does the human baby that God designed get its antibodies from to defend itself in the first 2 years of life?
The mom, right?
The mom. You want to talk about a perfectly designed setup? God created the woman and infused inside of it an immune system that by the time it's in its 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, whenever you decide to get pregnant, your body knows how to develop antibodies against bacteria, parasites, poisons, fungi. It knows how to do that. And then, beautifully, God made it to where, who typically is supposed to feed that baby? Where does it get its food supply from?
The mom.
The mom. That's how God designed you, by the way. God didn't design Similac.
No.
God designed breast milk in the mom of all mammals to feed its offspring, all of them in life. Notice no deer or elk or moose or elephants go looking for formula for their children. They have the food inside of them the way God designed them. Do you know why this is so amazing? The breast milk itself, because the mom and the baby are so intertwined and it has to feed off of you 24/7.
Yeah.
Because y'all are in the same environment all the time, no matter what fungus, bacteria, virus, parasite, venom you're exposed to, it doesn't matter. Your mom body has all the antibodies and knowledge to create, let's say you're exposed to salmonella, E. coli, it doesn't matter, a bacteria. Your body knows how to make antibodies against that. And if your baby's in the same environment with you, your body knows to secrete the same immune support to the baby through the breast milk. It is such a beautiful thing. You don't get this off of formula feeding, which formula is not bad. I'm just saying, this is how God designed the human body.
Yeah.
I'd love to see somebody argue that. This is how God designed the female to have breasts that make milk, that provide food to the baby, that eventually all mammals wean themselves from. It's really funny. The only species on Earth that actually never weans itself off of another animal's milk is humans.
Because we're drinking cow milk.
We keep drinking cow's milk, which is only designed for the first 2 years of a cow's life, a calf. And then they're supposed to wean off of that the rest of their life. We're the weird species that goes, let's just keep
because we don't
weaning.
think of it as like cow's breast milk. We
That's
just
right,
think it's cow milk.
Yep. So I just want you to know, this is why I find it very odd, the vaccine schedule as a whole, if you don't study anatomy and physiology and embryology, how the body of the baby and the newborn develops. And you don't know those stages. Once you do know that stuff, you realize real quickly that the vaccine narrative is weird. They should only be doing that after the age of 3 ever anyway, which fits in line with the CDC's own documents. That autism is 300 times more likely in an African-American male if vaccinated before the age of 3, but not after 3.
Wow.
This is why. You should not be messing with the baby's nervous system ever, personally. But really, the vaccine agenda is totally screwed up. You should be waiting till after 3. The truth is...
Does it mess with the nervous system?
Yes. Oh, in fact, I need to say this. Great question. What did God, in his design of you, what did he put around your brain and your spinal cord to protect the nervous system that controls the function of the human body he designed?
Fluid?
Well, it is floating in fluid, but that fluid's being held inside by some container. What's the container?
The spinal cord?
The spinal cord's, okay, so.
Oh God, I'm not doing good at my test.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
So what is the container?
Oh, so the container. So you got the brain.
Yeah.
Which controls every part of your body, everything you do. And then you got the spinal cord.
Yeah.
And around all of that, it's floating inside of something called cerebral spinal fluid, CSF. And you've heard of a spinal tap.
Yes.
That means they go in and take a sample of your spinal fluid called cerebral spinal fluid. That is all held in place by the most dense protective tissue God designed in the human body. The toughest tissue in your body is not bone. It's not ligaments.
Really?
Nope. It's actually the blood-brain barrier.
Really?
Which is this container all around the brain and around your spinal cord that holds that fluid and everything inside of it. That is the most protective, most dense tissue in the human body is the blood-brain barrier. God designed it that way to protect the brain and the nervous system because it controls the whole body. Your digestion, your sight,
it's everything.
Your movement, everything. Your immune system, producing antibodies, making red blood cells, it's all controlled by your nervous system.
So
God put this armor around it called the blood-brain barrier. Did you know that almost every single vaccine on Earth, including the COVID-19 vaccines, and I'm talking every vaccine, almost every one of them has a chemical in it called Polysorbate 80. And if it's not Polysorbate 80, it's another type of polysorbate called polyethylene glycol. They're all polysorbate chemicals. Do you know what polysorbates are in vaccines for? And they publish, this is why it's in there, to punch holes in your blood-brain barrier.
What?
To allow whatever else is in that vaccine to get to your brain.
No.
Formaldehyde, thimerosal, aluminum, which they say are going to produce an immune response. No. Aluminum, thimerosal, which is mercury and still in some of the vaccines. Formaldehyde, these are all known poisons to the nervous system. Ask your doctor if polysorbate 80 is right for you. It's also in all your cosmetics. Do you want to know why? It helps get the stuff through your blood-brain barrier and through the gut-blood barrier. It's in your foods too. They put it there to punch holes in your gut system and your blood-brain barrier to get poisons into your body that they can diagnose you with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, with these chemicals. And then they can treat you the rest of your life because they've now damaged a part of God's design, which was you.
That is crazy.
So in the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer was polyethylene glycol 2000. That's a polysorbate. That's why it was in there. And how many neurological problems did we see with this? Did you see Del Bigtree in his Highwire interviews? All these nurses shaking, can't walk, having seizures after their vaccines for COVID. That's because the chemical polyethylene glycol 2000 punched holes in the blood-brain barrier and delivered the poisons in the vaccine to the brain.
And everyone kind of reacts differently based off of like what's going on in their body.
Oh, and whether or not the same ingredients are in all of those vaccines, which they weren't.
No, they're different.
No, all the batches were different. Okay, so that was that one. Then you have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It actually had polysorbate 80 in it. And did you know that polysorbate 80, I should have to say this, it is published by Medical Science, that if you inject that into a human or they consume it in food, it's in a lot of ice creams, by the way. They use it as a softener to make ice cream creamy. So polysorbate 80 is in a lot of the stuff. Polysorbate 80, it is published, causes weakening of the structures of the spine of a vertebrate, including humans.
No.
Do you know what that turns into? Have you ever heard of scoliosis?
Yeah.
Well, that's an example of a spinal column degenerative disease, and that is published by the scientists that study polysorbate 80 in humans. They know this is what it does. It destroys your nervous system and your spinal column. How could that be a benefit?
If the nervous system gets hurt, does that cause like trauma to the nervous system?
Absolutely.
So you're literally, you will be traumatizing your baby.
Amen.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's crazy. This is why I decided as a kid or as a young adult and a young parent, I wasn't going to vaccinate my kids anymore. And I was just going to study God's nature and his pharmacy, which is vitamins, minerals, plants, water, air.
Homeopathy.
I love
homeopathy.
I use nature.
Yeah.
I trust nature.
Herbs.
I trust nature that God created more than I do medicine and what man created.
But honestly, even in my own personal experience, it's so effective. It's more effective and it brings you results versus dependency on a drug.
Very, very true. Oh, for example, there's another one, right?
Okay.
So have you heard about GLP-1 hormones?
Yes.
GLP-1 drugs?
Yes.
Can you name one?
Ozempic.
Ozempic. And its sister drug, Wegovy, made by the same company, Novo Nordisk in Denmark. This company in 5 years has made $2.21 trillion on Ozempic and Wegovy.
Yeah, it's been huge.
And America buys 90% of it.
Because we're the most overweight.
Okay. Do you know there's no GLP-1 hormone in those drugs, but they call them GLP-1 drugs?
What's in it?
Oh, this is marketing. This is propaganda. Everybody's convinced these are GLP-1 drugs and that inside of it must just be GLP-1 hormone. No, there's no GLP-1 anything in Ozempic or Wegovy. But you have to go read the research studies of how they developed it to know what they put in it. They put inside of it just one substance. It's called Exendin-4, EXENDIN-4. Remember, pharmakia. In the last days, Revelations 18:23, all nations of the earth will be deceived by pharmakia. You're all being deceived. But thank God there's some people that know how to read English. I'm one of them. So I just love reading. And I think they're totally trying to deceive us almost 24/7. So I decided to go look it up 3 years ago. What is this stuff, Ozempic and Wegovy? It's made up of a protein called Exendin-4. Exendin-4 is isolated from the venom of a lizard that lives in the southwestern United States deserts called the Gila monster lizard.
What?
And you're injecting that inside of you.
What?
And they've been studying this venom protein since 1956. I have a medical textbook called Venoms from 1956 where they started trying to isolate venom proteins from the Gila monster lizard to see what it would do in the human body. And they found that it will paralyze the vagal nerve. It'll paralyze the stomach sphincter that empties food into your intestines that you're eating at lunch and breakfast. And you won't be hungry for hours because the food's just sitting there in your stomach because it's not going into your intestines to be broken down and turned into fecal matter and nutrients to absorb from your intestines into your bloodstream. So, Exendin-4 is a neurotoxic venom from a lizard, and you're all injecting inside of you. And this drug, Ozempic and Wegovy, is being promoted as a weight loss drug and a diabetes drug. And the FDA just approved Wegovy, which is the exact same substance, for heart disease for all Medicare-age patients, and it's covered by Medicare. All right, Exendin-4 is a venom protein, and they have found and published that when you inject that into a human being, it will circulate into your bloodstream, obviously, because they just injected it inside of there, or you did yourself. You self-inject Ozempic and Wegovy once a week for the rest of your life. It's a lifelong prescription, like a high blood pressure drug. So you're injecting all of you once a week Exendin-4 Gila monster venom protein into your body, and they know that venom protein will circulate throughout your arteries and your intestines, and it will touch what are called L cells. And when it touches L cells, which is what they're abbreviated, it releases GLP-1 hormone in the body of a human. Do you know what else this Exendin-4 is published to do? Did you know that Gila monster venom, published by the Smithsonian Institute last year, they were interviewed? They wanted to know how toxic is Gila monster venom. Not a joke. They actually said, it's published by CNN, that Gila monster venom is as toxic and deadly as a western diamondback rattlesnake's venom. And there are now millions of Americans injecting that venom inside of them every single day, being told it's a GLP-1 drug approved by the FDA. This is venom, people, and you're injecting it into your body. And Exendin-4, this venom protein of the Gila monster, is published by the FDA with a black box warning. Anybody injects themselves with this for 12 to 36 months, you are tripling your risk of developing thyroid cancer. Called medullary thyroid cancers, and there's multiple of them. But do you know what oncologists around the world are telling me as they've seen my presentations about what Ozempic really is? They all call me and come to my conferences, and they report to the audiences. We're not seeing thyroid cancers exploding in Ozempic users and Wegovy users. Those who are diagnosed with new cancer after starting Ozempic and Wegovy, we're seeing explosions of breast cancer diagnosis in all of these people within a year or two. That's what they're seeing. But this venom protein is published to cause nerve growth factor and epidermal growth factor, which are two oncology terms, cancer terms, for the growth of tumors in the brain and in your organs.
Oh my gosh.
It's also published that 1 in 5 will develop diabetic retinopathy, meaning your retina will detach and you'll be permanently blind for the rest of your life while on Ozempic or Wegovy. And did you see People magazine published 6 months ago an article titled, People on Ozempic are now reporting eye rotting disease? That's the title of their article in People magazine. Venom destroys human tissue. It is not a cure for anything, but any of you out there who are losing weight, congratulations. I'd like to ask you, do you really believe you're overweight and you're diabetic and you have heart disease because you're Gila monster venom deficient? And if not, why are you injecting inside of you every day? And I just have to tell you, your medical doctors don't know it either. In fact, every medical doctor I've sent the articles to that this is what Ozempic and Wegovy is, when I send them the research articles, the mainstream articles about what it's made from, they all in unison have said the same thing to me by text and by phone call and by voice face-to-face. I was never told this by my pharmaceutical rep. I will never prescribe it again, and I'm going to call my patients right now and tell them to stop it.
Gosh.
Good, you should. No human being on earth is deficient in venom of any kind, ever. Yet we are being pummeled with venom around the world in our cosmetics. Yes, they are using venoms in our cosmetics to get it inside of our body to create all kinds of diseases while they tell you it's for anti-aging. I'm not joking. They're using spider venom, scorpion venom, and now snake venom in genetically modified seeds to make all of our crops. And they publish. Frito-Lay even owns patents on venom-laced seeds for potatoes, for their potato chips. And I show the research studies on all of it. Monsanto owns the majority of venom genetically modified seeds that have bee, wasp, scorpion, snake, and spider venom infused in the seed, and they publish the crops that grow: soybean, rice, wheat, corn, cucumbers, melons, all of them. I have the articles to show you. I have the research studies I've been showing the whole world for several years now, that the majority of your crops now are grown to grow venom and are engineered to grow venom in the stalk, the stem, the leaves, and the fruits of those plants. And do you know why they say they're doing this? They say all of society is benefiting from these venom-laced plants and crops because when pests come to eat them, they will eat the plant or the leaf, and then the venom goes inside of them and they die from the venom. So it's a natural plant engineered by man to create venom inside of it that kills the insects that try to eat them. And they're saying all of human beings and human life and society, I'm quoting from their research studies, are benefiting from the engineering of crops to produce venom inside the plants. Really, if we're all benefiting from that, how come this is the first time you've ever heard it? Don't you think they would tell you what they're doing for you to benefit you and your life? If it's killing all the insects, what does the venom do inside of you when you eat it?
It kills you.
What does venom do inside of you?
It's poison.
Oh, and don't believe anybody that says you can't swallow venom and stomach acid destroys it. Every snake venom researcher on earth says that is a great misunderstanding of the medical profession. Did you know lisinopril, which is an ACE inhibitor drug for high blood pressure? In 1981, it was released, approved by the FDA, to lower blood pressure. Any drug that ends with pril, lisinopril, captopril, enalapril. 22 million Americans, by the way, woke up this morning, and the first thing they did when they woke up was open an orange prescription bottle, took lisinopril, and swallowed it this morning. 22 million Americans did. Do you know that since 1981, medical doctors who had no idea they were doing this, do you know they're prescribing to every one of their patients dried snake venom in a pill from a viper in Brazil called the Jaracus viper? And it's a known neurotoxin in their venom that paralyzes your blood vessels to lower your blood pressure. Did you also know that that same venom protein is published to cause cancer in everybody who consumes it? So when they tell you can't swallow venom and get it past your stomach acid to get inside your bloodstream, you're doing it every day when you prescribe lisinopril. They're swallowing snake venom into their intestines. It's getting in past their stomach acid in their intestines, delivered into their bloodstream to paralyze their blood vessels to drop their blood pressure.
And when people get Botox and inject it into their right where their brain is.
What is Botox?
It's venom.
From what?
A snake.
Actually, it's venom from a bacteria.
Oh, God.
It's called botulinum, which is a known deadly venom from a bacteria. They just abbreviated it, called it Botox, and put it in a pretty box and sold it to you. Go on Google, what does botulinum do to the human body when introduced? And watch all your symptoms you've ever had since you started doing that, if you have any. I really do want everybody to know, too, that most of the people in the world are on prescription medications, but all of them wake up every day still being milligram poisoned every day, one poison after another. It is amazing to me, the creation of God, that it can detox through its bowels, through its urinary tract, through its skin, through sweating, and through gas exchange, how it can detox the level of poisons we're introduced with every single day. This machine that God designed is remarkable and miraculous. It is miraculous. And I don't know if you've ever thought about it this way, but you ever broken a bone? Have you ever broke a bone?
I have.
Did you ever have to wear a cast?
I did.
Every single doctor will put on a cast, put on a splint, and then they'll tell you to wait 4 to 6 weeks and come back and re-x-ray before they take it off, because they would never take it off first before knowing the bone is healed. What's amazing is the bone was broken. Who made the bone? God did. He designed that. The bone breaks. The medical doctors put a cast around it, and you wear that. What's the purpose of the cast? Does the cast heal the bone?
No.
No, what does the cast do? What's its purpose?
It keeps your arm in place.
Yeah, you've got 2 broken pieces. Could you imagine hitting it on something else and re-breaking it while it's trying to heal? Okay, great. Isn't it miraculous that within an 8 to 12 week period or less, when there's a broken bone in your body, your immune system all by itself reunites those 2 bone ends together to form one whole bone again? The medical doctor did nothing. Medicine didn't do anything. All they're doing is waiting for God's immunity inside of you to self-direct itself to gather calcium and magnesium and go rebuild the bone where it's broken. Science is always watching the miracle of God right in front of you as it heals. You heal yourself. God's immune system heals you. You just got to get out of the way, get the poisons out of your life, clean up your external environment and your internal environment, and watch the miracle that occurs. And you can have a symptom-free life too. It's amazing.
So that's your advice to people, to basically cut the toxins as much as you can.
Amen.
Put your body through a good detox.
Yeah.
And trust God.
Yeah, you've learned your whole life that life requires for animals and humans air, water, and food every day, right?
Uh-huh.
You remember those 3 principles?
Mm-hmm.
Air, water, and food. Now we believe, look at every senior citizen in America, for an example. Now it is a belief system, almost like a religious belief, that everybody on earth requires air, water, food, and prescription medications or vaccines. And most people in America over 60 years old are waking up first taking medications every day the rest of their life as if this is required by life. It is not. You're required air, water, and food, and the quality of your air, water, and food dictate the quality of the life you live in this temple God created. And that's exactly how he designed it. So I recommend people, you've heard about the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. I created 3 years ago a platform called Healing for the Ages. And it is all the basic principles of God's design and nature, how it is he designed plants, minerals, and vitamins in the earth, in our plants, and in our animals that provide the basics for every cell in the human body to function normal. And when you deplete any of those, you get sick. When you put other things in other than those, you get sick. So we are educating them. It's me. AGES is an acronym, actually. Dr. Ardis, Dr. Group, Dr. Ely, Dr. Schmidt. We have a combined 100 years of clinical experience in treating patients and helping them recover their health from medical diagnoses they were told you will never live without our drugs. We've been doing it for over 100 years combined in our clinical experience.
That's awesome. Well, this has been such an incredible interview. I want to say thank you for just taking the time. Will you come back and we can talk about the principles of health?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yay.
I would love it.
Okay, I'm
glad I didn't let you down.
Okay, no, you are so amazing. I just want to say thank you so much, and we'll have you back, okay?
Awesome.